is the Sensitive CEO Show, igniting sensitive entrepreneurs to grow your heart-centered business. I'm your host, Rose Cox, and this podcast shares with you inspiring and thought-provoking conversations for sensitive entrepreneurs wanting to grow a sustainable online business in a way that feels exciting and aligned with your soul. Along with my carefully curated expert guests, we share science-backed advice, proven strategies, and the systems we use to succeed in our businesses and our lives as highly sensitives, introverts, and empaths. And by the way, if you would like to be updated on when each episode is released, feel free to subscribe to the short and sweet newsletter. You'll also get weekly recommendations and tips, especially for HSPs, empaths, and introverts. To subscribe, pop on over to the website sensitiveceo.show or rosecox.com/pod. Now on to today's show. Hey, it's Rose and welcome to another episode of the Sensitive CEO Show. And in today's episode, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to Catherine Wood. Catherine is the founder and head coach of Unbounded Potential, a boutique coaching firm that helps bold, brilliant, and big-hearted leaders in business and corporate come home to their purpose and create holistic success by socially defining success markers. Welcome, Catherine. So lovely to talk with you again today.
So lovely to be here again, Rose.
I would love for you to share with the audience today a bit about your background and who you work with, what you do.
Absolutely. My background is actually in economics. I'm a former senior economist for the federal government in the US, turned master certified coach, and I specifically work with high achieving, ambitious, driven Washingtonians, of which there are countless, to really help them find fulfillment and satisfaction beyond the kind of ambitious achievement epidemic that I think we find so many of ourselves in these days. And I specifically love working with entrepreneurs and women entrepreneurs to really help them follow their own path.
Yeah, love that. And you talk about raising your conscious awareness. Can you share a little bit about that with the audience?
So I think so much of our work as coaches is around becoming more conscious around who we are from the day to day, and then acting in alignment with that consciousness. And I think that that's something that we've really learned from the pandemic, just the ways of being and living our lives that are either in alignment with what we want or out of alignment with what we want. And I'm curious what it's like for you in Australia, but here in the US, as employers are pushing employees back into the workspace, there's really this pushback, this general unwillingness to want to have to go back to the office in the same way or with the same frequency or demand. Mm-hmm. And professionals having a higher level of awareness around what actually works for them and their lifestyles. I think that that's really supported some of the recent drive to entrepreneurship that we've seen.
Yeah, totally. And it's in Australia, I know, I mean, I am a little bit out of that area, to be honest, the workforce area. A lot of my friends are entrepreneurs, or many are also retired. But I know from what I hear that there are a lot of companies that are encouraging people to go back, and there is pushback. But then there's also some people who do want to go back because they might be at home with their families and they actually need to, especially the males, they actually would rather have that space in the office away from their families. So yeah, I guess that from that perspective. And plus, I guess there are extroverted people who would rather be in an office space and to have people around them that aren't just their family or their pets or their children. I'm more than happy to have my pets and my husband around and no one else. But I know there's a lot of people who do like that camaraderie, and I guess, yeah.
I mean, I feel the same. I would much rather just be in my house with my dogs and my husband to be. But I do think that there's just been this kind of like lovely trend towards greater consciousness around who we want to be and how we want to operate in our lives and our careers that has just been so encouraging to see, especially from an entrepreneurial coach mindset.
Yeah, yeah. And something you talk about a lot, Catherine, is achieving more by working less. And that just sings so much to me. Can you share with everyone listening today more about that?
You know, it is so ingrained in me. And I think for most of my life, it was just an automatic habit. I don't know if I've shared this on our last chat, but I grew up in a bed and breakfast. My parents were innkeepers for my whole childhood. So, they actually just retired during the pandemic, but for 29 years, they were innkeepers. And that was my whole upbringing. So you can imagine as the daughter of innkeepers where you were living in your parents' workspace, there's no separation between when you're working and when you're not working. We always had guests walking through our living room. We had guests in our home on Christmas morning. There was just, the boundaries were so grayed. So I just kind of always grew up in this environment of always working. And it was such an automatic habit of just operating by default, like always looking for how to be useful, to be productive, to be helpful, to be tactical. And I got a lot of validation and approval for that. Like it was how I kind of gained a sense of my self-esteem and my self-worth, was how I could contribute, how I could be helpful. And when you start to decompose that mindset and you start to see the ways in which you're just busying yourself with work or looking for ways to be busy, to check items off a to-do list, which, listen, I love a good to-do list. You can start to see, what are the ways which are feeding your ego, feeding my ego, versus what are the actions that are aligned with my highest commitments, my biggest goals that will actually move the needle forward. And when we can really start to have that deeper sense of self-awareness and consciousness around where we have the greatest comparative advantage, where our work makes the biggest results, we start to regain our time. We start to regain our freedom from the endless compulsive habits of being busy. I notice a lot of the clients that I work with, they just have a compulsive need to be busy, and decomposing that need to be busy to really be able to enjoy being with themselves, enjoy that spaciousness that's accessible from stillness, and finding joy and delight in that. It really gives us access to achieving more with a lot less time and efforting.
Gosh, I didn't know that about you growing up in a inn. That would have been quite challenging. I mean, quite nice, but also quite challenging to not have any sort of family space, even on Christmas Day.
I mean, I think it's one of the reasons I talk about boundaries so much, because really had to learn.
Makes so much sense why you went down the boundary
Right?
road. Yeah. Gosh. So do you have a couple of tips you could share with people on how they can work less but achieve more?
So I think there's many. I think, when I work with clients and we do project planning, I always start by helping clients identify the experience of life that they're looking to create for themselves in all their project areas. Because I think that when we are driven by goals, we falsely identify and attach ourselves to the outcome. We falsely think, oh, in my business, I have to generate 250K this year, or my physical well-being. I need to lose 30 pounds. And we really connect with those numbers. And in reality, those results are just the consequence of us creating a distinct experience of life in that area that allows us to create that result. So for instance, like I would assert that we don't just want to generate more money in our business for money's sake, particularly not the clients that you and I tend to work with. Like we're driven by something much larger, whether it's the freedom to be more connected with nature. You know, I always love your daily Instagram stories about your hike. And I do something very similar. Like I really cherish my free time so that I can be outdoors with my pups. Something I gain some of the most joy from. It's my time. And so for me, that's what business is about. It's about giving me access, of course, to impact and contribution, but it gives me access to time freedom and really having more capacity and space for the things that I love. So when we can really connect with that distinct experience of life, that new way of being that's possible from achieving our goal, it it gives us more space to play inside of reaching the goal as well as detach from the outcome. Because we all know that when we are super attached to the outcome, that when we're really, set and fixed on reaching it, it always kind of slips through our fingers.
Yeah.
But when we can focus on that what and detach from the how, that's where the magic lies. That's where the opportunity for breakthrough and support and new ways of being and expansion is available. So I'd say that's one tip that I think is really supportive in achieving more by doing less, is really getting clear on the what, the why of what you want to create. Another thing that I think is really, it's a bit more tactical, but it's equally as helpful, is starting with the most important items on your list. I think for me with my time management, I always plan tomorrow today. So at the end of each workday, I plan the next workday and I identify the top 3 to 5 priorities that will move my project areas forward if I simply focus there. So, typically we resist the most important things because they are the most meaningful for us. So simply by starting with that area of resistance, that thing that is, again, often the most important and what we resist most, it can oftentimes just create a floodgate of more power and energy to take on other things with a lot less resistance, efforting, hustling, time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so important, isn't it, to get that main task of the day done, because that's the one, as you say, we resist it. But the feeling, I think it releases endorphins or something when you have ticked it off, and you feel empowered to tick more off because you've done that big major thing. But sometimes, I don't know about you, but if I've ticked off that one thing, I'll actually finish for the day and just give myself the rest of the day off. I don't do it often, but sometimes I do, because we're allowed to do that, right? In our own business.
Oh, I love that. That's so delicious.
Yeah.
I mean, on that vein, like I think another area is, as entrepreneurs, I think we oftentimes make business harder than it needs to be by following someone else's footprints or someone else's blueprint of how we should grow our business or what we should do or how we should market ourselves. And I think when we really connect within, when we really connect with the experience of business that we want to generate for ourselves, we oftentimes can intuit the the natural the natural way of operating, the natural service offering. And if we can just trust and hone that intuitive path, it's so much more expansive with a lot less efforting.
Yeah, that's so true. And we are very intuitive as sensitive CEOs. So that's one of our superpowers. So why not use it and use it to our advantage? I love that. So Catherine, I know you talk a lot about the connection between feeling intrinsically deserving, worthy, and loved, and by sharing stories with authenticity and vulnerability. Can you talk a little bit more to that? Because I think that's so important, the authenticity and vulnerability side of things for us.
I always share the story that the way I came to coaching was from heartbreak. I I was in a relationship with a partner who I lost myself in that relationship. And when the relationship suddenly ended, I of course lost the relationship, but I so much more importantly lost my sense of self because I had placed so much of my identity inside of that relationship. And on the other side of that relationship, like I actually had to find me. And in doing so, I generated my first breakthrough in coaching, which was really just a breakthrough in learning how to love and honor and nurture my relationship with myself. And it's been the breakthrough that has kept on giving for all the years that I've been coaching, and I've been working with my own coach consistently. And I think I've always been evolving in learning how to love myself more and to break up with the notion that my sense of worth or my intrinsic value is based on what I achieve or who I'm in a relationship with or what I accomplish. I would say that it's kind of the underpinnings of the work that I do with all my clients, the breakthrough that no one comes to coaching for and everyone walks away with. I think it's just really, really core to working with ambitious type A, high performing women is, the the more driven we are, the larger our imposter syndrome. The more achievement oriented we are, the larger that inner judger.
Yeah.
And learning how to find and achieve a sense of worth and intrinsic value that's separate from what we produce is, I think that's where happiness lies. That's where we access that, just that deep sense of joy that we all crave.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, Kat, you mentioned in the past that some of the ways in which you run your business and manage your time make you uncomfortable to share publicly. Can you share with us why publicly?
Living amongst so many people who represent former versions of myself, it drives up a lot of just kind of like how I should be or how I should operate in business. And I do things very different. I have a 4-day work week. I only see clients 3 days a week. I'm very intentional around when I work and when I don't work. And I think for a lot of people who don't have or don't live by their own ideal schedule, it drives up, it drives up stuff for other people. And as an empath, I feel and sense that envy or comparison, and it doesn't always feel good. But at the end of the day, I think so much of our work as coaches and healers is to really model new ways of being. It's to model new ways of showing up in business. So I always, I kind of sense that trepidation or that nervousness to share. And then I purposely share it anyway, because, if I'm not practicing what I talk about and really just modeling what I'm committed to, then, I'm not doing my own work.
Yeah, and that's all about authenticity as well, isn't it? It's really
Totally.
showing up and giving permission to our clients to show up that way as well.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend recently who's a therapist, and I, I have a lot of compassion for therapists because I really feel like they've been so overworked and undervalued over the last couple of years in the pandemic. And I think to some degree, there's more freedom in the coaching space to design your business on your own terms.
Yeah.
To really write the rule book for how you do business. And so I actually was really encouraged in sharing with her that, I only see clients the first 3 weeks of every month. The last week of every month is an implementation week, and for them and for me, And I felt so encouraged that she was so inspired hearing my working schedule, because I really can't imagine another industry that would really be positively impacted by taking more control over their own work schedules.
Yeah. It's so interesting, isn't it? And I'm very similar. I only see clients 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Same.
I also have the last week off of the, or I think it's so important for not just implementation, but for decompression, or for want of a better word, but just that space. I think we all need a bit of space. And that kind of leads into my question about boundaries, which of course I had to bring it up because you are known for your boundaries. Is there a link between boundaries and being highly sensitive and empathic?
I think that that's a lovely question. And I would say, from a coaching perspective, I think that there absolutely is. I think that as an empath and as an HSP, boundaries can be naturally more grade for us, because we feel other people's emotions, and we sometimes intuit what they're thinking or sense what they're feeling. And sometimes we might sense other people's feelings before they know that they're feeling that way. Yeah. So it's something to be really responsible for as an empath, as an HSP. And I think really increases the necessity for honoring our own boundaries, so that we have more capacity to sense what's ours and to notice what is others people's.
Yeah.
And perhaps, reflect it or name it, versus become defensive or take other people personally. I think physical, time, energetic boundaries, they all give us more capacity to both honor and protect our gifts.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I've loved our conversation today, Catherine. And I've got one final question before I let you go. When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, what do you do?
I trust it.
Beautiful.
Because what I notice is that as an HSP, I'm deeply intuitive, and answers come to me. So at this point in my journey, and with my own level of awareness, I'm used to being focused and oriented towards the path, the future, and what I want. And so if I'm disconnected or unfocused, then I trust that there's a purpose for that disconnect, and that I'm meant to sit in the question longer.
I love that. I think that's one of my favorite answers to this question so far.
I loved the question. I sat with it to think about what my truth was.
And then you trusted it, that the truth would come. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, where can people find you, Catherine? I'm going to pop everything in the show notes, and I'm also going to pop your book, Belonging, in the show notes. But where would you like people to find you?
I would say head over to my website. It's unbounded-potential.com. I'm in the process of relaunching and rebranding, and it's going to be just magnificent. So I'm excited for people to check it out.
Brilliant. And I know by the time this podcast airs, it will be ready, and your new podcast will probably be ready as well, which is very exciting.
Can't wait.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Catherine.
It's been my pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Sensitive CEO Show. If you enjoyed this episode, or if you think it would be useful to someone else, please leave me a review on sensitiveceo.show. Just follow the prompt in the menu. Each month, I'm offering one lucky reviewer a chance to win a 1-hour business and mindset audit with me. This in-depth audit covers the 5 pillars of your online business, and you'll walk away with super clear action steps specifically for you and your business. You'll be re-energized and motivated to step into your greatness. You'll also find all of the show notes for each episode on the website sensitiveceo.show. And while you're there, make sure you subscribe to the short and sweet newsletter. You'll get weekly recommendations and tips, especially for HSPs, empaths, and introverts. And as the name implies, the email is short and sweet. The Sensitive CEO Show, igniting your sensitive superpowers.